Oh, there we go. Or I got cut off by John at the back. It's good. No, it wasn't you. It was me. It's not you, it's me. Just each presenter will have about 10 minutes and then 2 minutes for questions afterward. If you'd like to ask a question, just put your hand up, try and grab my attention. I'll be keeping my eyes on everybody, and I will bring you the microphone so that we can all hear your question. And then we'll move on to there we go. That's a little bit better. Yeah, but that's about it. We'll have a break in the middle at about, I think it's at 11. Just, 10:45 will be our coffee break. So, yeah, and I think that's about it. So, in about a minute or so, I'll introduce our first speaker. So, settle yourselves and we'll talk. All right, everybody, it is time to introduce our first speaker. This is Erin Brady from the Culp Planetarium in High Point, North Carolina. Her talk is Expanding Your Horizons, Building Campus Connections in the Planetarium. Let's all give Erin a nice round of applause as our first speaker today. I'll turn it over to her.
Good morning, everyone. Once again, my name is Erin Brady. I am the director of the Culp Planetarium at High Point University. So I'm really going to be talking about some of these different ways we've been trying to foster and build these connections outside of our planetarium to primarily our science building, but then also across campus. Since being on a university campus for us, our funding source is coming from the university. So having these extra things in our back pocket to really solidify the importance, significance, and the various ways our planetarium is used across campus. So these are not all new ideas, but I'll just be sharing some of them from things that are really simple to things that are a little bit more involved. So one of the easiest ways that we've started working through this is by using our pre-show time. So that time before a show even starts, and just filling it with some additional information to tie us to our science building and support some of the things they're doing. Things like sharing advertisements or flyers for these events that are happening by the departments or either through the clubs, as well as using a 180 lab image slideshow that I've put together over time of our lab spaces throughout the building. So these advertisements are really just exports from a PowerPoint video that one of our admins puts together about once a month, sharing upcoming events. So it's really easy for me to just throw it into the system. For these flyers, these are just tacked up on some of the bulletin boards across our building. So I will take a picture of them, remove the background in Photoshop. You could do the same thing with GIMP, a free version of that software, and then just display it on the dome. So for me, it's really time-saving to not rework the same information into a new graphic, and I'm just particularly fond of the way it looks when it's on the dome, as if it is really just stuck up there. And so it's, again, just promoting some of these other events within our science building. Additionally, this slideshow of images will also play. So our flyers and advertisements are mostly used for the weekly shows, since that is just on campus, students, faculty, and staff, whereas these images will cross over a bunch of different show types that we have. So they're going through some of these research spaces that are used just for research or for classes to highlight them throughout the building and let you know what they are. So it's a good way for people who are not in our science building to see what these students will have access to, and just to get into these spaces that are access restricted. So this is used in those weekly shows, again, just to let people know what happens in our science building, but then it's also used for our family weekend shows. So parents can get a sense of some of these spaces their students are in, or again, just learn in general. and it's also used for our presidential scholarship weekend shows, which I'll talk a little bit more later on, but that's an avenue to then reach prospective students, to draw them into our wider science building. In addition to this pre-show time, we've also used the planetarium in various different ways for classes. So there's some classes that just take place in there, like our introductory astronomy or environmental science. So these are gen ed classes. We have an additional regular IT projector installed, so it functions just as a large lecture hall. We're not having to run our planetarium projectors. So it's higher seating capacity, but it's also really good exposure for these freshman, sophomore students to learn in general. We have a planetarium on campus, and it does some other things as well. And by having their classes in the planetarium, it also gives them that flexibility to use the astronomy software to help talk about different ideas in their classes, or even play one of these full dome movies we have that ties into course content. We also will sometimes have classes come visit the planetarium just to watch, typically one of those full dome movies that complements what they're talking about currently in their class. So it's pretty easy for me to schedule that as long as it's outside of those normal scheduled classes in the planetarium, and I then take advantage of that live welcome to tell them more about other opportunities that we have in the planetarium. And we have also used it as just a guest lecture space because, again, higher seating capacity, it's a regular IT projector in there, and it also just adds a level of formality to these guest speakers that our classroom spaces don't quite have. And our planetarium in particular is just set up really well for this with the rake seating. We've installed a platform at the front to help bring up those speakers to be more in your eyesight. And then these can just be advertised a little bit more widely so more people can attend. So this is all kind of internal to our science building to really integrate ourselves with them instead of being an island within this larger building. But thinking a little bit beyond to our larger campus goals, one of the most important things on an undergrad university campus is having your next incoming class of freshmen coming in. And so we've been able to work a little bit as an admissions tool to help reach some of these incoming and prospective students. And the easiest way we do this is just by allowing campus tours to come through the planetarium. So our hallway lights typically stay on between those two doors, so the tours can either look inside or even come in one door, walk along the back wall, and then exit at the other side. So they're either seeing the space acting as a classroom if classes are going on. If classes are not in session, we typically leave these full dome movie trailers running with our projectors at half power, just so they see some content happening and another way we use the planetarium. And if I am ever in there working on the system, I also leave these doors open, and I try to make it a point to talk to these people when they come in. So again, give them an overview of the variety of ways we use the planetarium, but then also make that personal connection to them. So that is really easy to just allow that to happen. But then what is a little bit more involved is being a part of our presidential scholarship weekends. So these are for students who have been admitted to the university, and based on their GPA, they're invited to come interview for various levels of scholarship to the university. So outside of their interview time, there's a few other sessions they can attend, and one of them is coming to the planetarium. So these are more informational shows to give an overview of some of the things we can do in there, ways they can get involved, and then playing a full dome movie for fun and entertainment. But it's been a really great way to reach some of these non-science major students to think a little bit more broadly about the benefits of having a planetarium on campus. So that is a little bit more time intensive, but you're really reaching these prospective students. Some other events that we've then also been a part of over the summer, I had our first joint event with our employee wellness department on campus. So they are focused on having a variety of different events throughout this year for healthy habits so that it's encouraging you to take care of yourself in a variety of ways. But there's also then ways to track points for certain things, and if you collect enough points, you get an incentive break on your insurance program. So it was a really new avenue to then reach some other faculty and staff on campus, get them into the planetarium, again, take advantage of that live introduction to encourage them to come back, or think about scheduling a visit with their department or any of the clubs that they are overseeing. And this was really easy for me to do because we watched the sunset meditation video from the Ball State Planetarium. So it was really easy and a really good way to make new connections. But now we are really getting into this upper tier of more complicated events where one of the things we do is partner with our science school for some outreach. So this is a really big event we do over the summer with our research students on campus. All the lab groups have their own hands-on demo they are doing, but then it's also evolved into doing about once a month visits to the museum where it's sponsored by a different science club. So I am one of the organizers that helps facilitate that, and so the planetarium is then also recognized as one of the sponsors. And if it's one of these really big summer events we have, typically our campus photographer will come and we'll have an article written up, so it's also really good for publicity, internally, externally, and making a connection to our community. Last but not least, we are also integrated into our summer undergraduate research program in the sciences, better known as SERPs. So this is the internal 2-month competitive research program on campus for students that they are doing research with faculty all throughout the summer, and then they're presenting their research at the end in a 2-day symposium. So this SERPs symposium is housed out of the planetarium as kind of like a home base. And we're really using the software to help drive this event forward. So during the welcoming remarks and introductions for all the sessions, we have our program cover displayed with the sponsor logos. We also use the pre-show time as well to show images from the summer with research that was happening and other events. And then students, for presenting their research, can do that as either an oral session or a poster presentation. So oral sessions will function the same way as like our classes, any guest lectures, just using that IT system. But our poster presentations, those students are required to send in a 1-minute elevator pitch for their poster. So it's a little bit more time intensive to collect all of this, get it formatted, and then script it together to display it. But it's really giving dedicated time, attention, and this opportunity to hear about the research from students presenting their posters in the same way we give that attention to those presenting in an oral session. It's also just a great way to encourage people to go to that poster session later on, since it's announced before those oral presentations start, and to hear a little bit about their research as well. So again, it's time intensive, but the end result really does make it worth it. And our university provost will typically come to the symposium for some period of time. So not only is it a great way to hear about the excellent research that some of these students are doing, but it also highlights the use of our planetarium in a very different way. And it is a great example of that integration with our larger science building and the various ways we are supporting our campus efforts, both large and small. So I think I am well out of time, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Let's give Erin a round of applause first. Wonderful job. And I see a question here.
Thank you, Erin. I have a 2-part question, but it's very quick. First question, how many full-time staff do you have?
Me.
How do you do all that?
So some of these things were built up when it was the previous director and myself, so I had a little bit more time to get that done. So it's now at a point where I'm mostly sustaining these efforts. But some of the bigger time-eating efforts, I just try my best to keep doing it.
We got time for one more if anybody else has a question. Yeah.
That was really my question.
Okay.
Staff of one, holy cow. But then to what extent do you allow these other professors or third-party guest speakers to do some of the lifting? Access to your computers, are you comfortable with, hey, instead of me rendering these videos, or here's the criteria, provide me and I will assemble. To what level do you allow third-party people to access your system?
Absolutely. So for those guest speakers, typically they are just hooking up to the external projector. But for faculty teaching in the planetarium, like our astronomy faculty, he's new. I've been working with him to get him to learn the system. So I'm really hands-off with those classes that take place in there. I am there to support them, help facilitate them, but they are doing all of that heavy lifting on their own.
All right, let's give another round of applause for Erin. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm happy to go. Yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, time for our second speaker of the morning. This is Mike Smale from the Adler Planetarium. You're the coolest venue in town, and you don't even know it. Please welcome Mike Smale.
Hello again. We're going to talk today about maybe thinking of yourself a little bit differently. So we're going to be talking about things that you can do in your planetarium that are maybe not public sky shows or the traditional public programming the way you might be thinking about. So we'll dive into that. And I want to preface this by I'm going to be talking about a lot of things that we have done at the Adler, but if there's like one big point I want you to take away from all of this is that the stuff that I'm going to talk about is cumulative. This kind of thing where you start doing it, and these things are going to build on each other. People are going to see the things you're doing. They're going to reach out to you. Most of the things I'm going to be talking about are not like things that we came up with on our own. They're things that people in the community reached out to us about that we were able to work with them to bring to the table. So, for those of you that may not be familiar, Adler Planetarium, we're in downtown Chicago. Truly a dystopian hellscape of our time. Just the smoldering remains of American carnage. The horrors persist, and so do we. So the first thing I want to talk about, the first kind of section of things is music. This is just a super low bar. If you were here the other night, if you saw the Jason Achilles performance in the Dome, you got a great example of how phenomenally easy it is to just get artists and musicians into your dome. Hot young artists in your area want to meet you. I don't care if you're in a big city, if you're in a small town, people will seek you out. Everybody wants to play the planetarium. Fact of life. This was a performance we did. We hosted a couple years ago. A guy named Rob Mazurek and his Exploding Star Orchestra. He's kind of like a avant-garde, kind of weird jazz guy. He's from Chicago, but he's moved to Marfa, Texas, and his record label reached out about wanting to do an album release show for his. He had a record called Lightning Dreamers, and they're like, "Hey, we'd like to have the 10-piece orchestra perform in the Dome." And he's also a visual artist, and he does some very dynamic, eclectic sort of visual art. And we'd like to pair his visual art with his music and do this thing in the Dome. So, of course, they had never thought about working in a spherical display before or working in a dome. So we got the chance to work with their video production team and sort of convert his content in a way that worked in the Dome. And we hosted this kind of event, 2 sold-out shows, one night, cool, everybody had a good time, we did a cool thing, right? So 9 months later, early last year, International Anthem reached out to us and they said, oh, by the way, so they did pro shot video of this. If you go on YouTube and you just look up Rob Mazurek, Adler Planetarium, you'll be able to find the full video of the performance. But they were like, we also recorded the audio, and would you guys mind if we released the audio as an album? And we said, go for it. Yeah, why would we not want you to do that? And so last fall, last year about this time, Rob Mazurek live at the Adler Planetarium showed up in record stores and on Bandcamp and CD and vinyl, and it's the tale. Any these things that you're doing, you're building a tale. You're building future success for yourself by putting yourself out there, getting your name out there in places, especially in places where you aren't currently or maybe never imagined that you would be. Quick sidebar: there is a copy of this record in the door prizes. So stick around for Saturday, and you might win a copy. It's pretty cool. More recently, this past June, we were contacted by Chance the Rapper's management company. He's been doing, so he just released a new record called Starline a couple weeks ago. And over the past year and a half, he'd been doing these listening parties, these things they called writings on the wall experiences. And again, if you look up Chance writings on the wall on YouTube, you can see some examples of those. I don't think there's video, on his social there is, I don't think there's a long form video of this experience online yet. But basically what they would do is they would rent a warehouse, and they would do this sort of 3 projection screen video thing with lyrics, beanbags on the floor, and subwoofers, and then people would listen to the record on silent disco headphones, and then feel the bass would go through the subs, and it would vibrate the beanbags, and they gave people notebooks to write what they were inspired, what they thought about, draw pictures, and he did a kind of a Q&A thing with them. And so they're like, hey, this is the last one. The record is done now. We want to do do it big. So same kind of discussion. We worked with them. We shared some. There were 1 or 2 visual clips that we shared with them. They ended up using because this was a very very rushed last minute kind of thing. But ultimately, all came together, and it was a performance. They're a little hard to see in front of the fire. There were dancers on some of the songs. Just a really cool, phenomenal experience. And then as we're talking with them, we have these sort of conversations with all of these things. You do something once and it's cool and that's great, but something good and cool, it kind of sucks if it just disappears and nothing ever happens with it ever again. So we're like, hey, let me tell you about this website called planetariumdatabase.org, and there's lots of places that might be interested in doing something like this. You could maybe even tour it. And so they were and this was like 2 months ago, so they're like taking notes and like we'll see if anything ever comes of it. But again, it's about like setting the framework so that something hopefully good can come of it. And then the last example I want to share with you, this was like 2 weeks ago. WBEZ, which is like Chicago National Public Radio, reached out. They wanted to do like a special kind of private listener event. Jeff Tweedy is a solo musician. You might also know him from he fronts the band Wilco, and he was in Uncle Tupelo like way back when. But he just released a new triple album called Twilight Override. And they're like, we want to like do a concert out in front at the Adler at twilight with like the sun setting, and that was cool. But then we were like, hey, but let us show you a room inside that you guys might like too. And they ended up being blown away with the concept of the dome. So we staged. This was like 2 weeks ago. A couple of musical performances, and like this was literally just like a slow fly around the universe. Like it's something we can all do. Even if you're like, oh, I'm not like a great like pilot, I'm not great at flying, there, as you hopefully know, there are like hours of 4K free content available from like European Southern Observatory and NASA and ESO. There's 8K and like 8K 60 content out there, just literally like free online that you can just use with credit and put together these really cool custom experiences. So stepping up a little bit from just like music and performance and sort of like artistic performance, another thing we've been doing a fair bit of are location shoots for like movies and TVs. So there was a show, I think it only lasted one season on NBC, it was called Ordinary Joe. They filmed a healthy amount of the pilot episode at the Adler Planetarium. And this was cool, it was kind of like an alternate reality. It's one of the, like the sliding doors movie kind of thing where it's like the decision you make, how it like, influences your life. And so we were able to work with them, and they had these sort of like 3 different timelines that were implied by like color. So they weren't like, oh yeah, we want like to go to Mars, right? They were like, oh, we need something that's kind of like blue. We need something that's kind of orange. We need something that's kind of green. And so we were able to work with their team to create, again, custom content in our theaters. And that was then used for various scenes, various characters in this episode. And like the trailer for this like ran during the Super Bowl. Like so. Random stuff that we did in our planetarium, like, was on the Super Bowl, which was really cool. Now, a lot of the stuff I've been showing so far was in our theater with the removable seats. I know that it's not the norm, but again, all of these things I'm talking about, you can do in like any kind of theater. So, I know there's another an Apple TV Plus show called Shining Girls, which also filmed at the Adler. We filmed these shots in our other theater. Philippa Sue, she played an Adler astronomer. This was like a time-traveling thing. So there were some lecture hall shots. I don't think the murderer. So spoiler alert: she gets murdered in the observatory, which is a thing that happens all the time in the dystopian hellscape of Chicago. So, but that was cool. And I think it was snippets from our episode showed up in like 5 or 6 different episodes throughout the series, which is pretty cool. Another case where we were approached by Fender, which does a sort of like interview performance thing called Fender Sessions. They're doing a session with Beach Bunny, who's in Chicago kind of indie pop artist. This is also, you can look this up on YouTube. You can watch the finished thing there as well. So it was a mashup of the sort of interviews, inspiration, like the talk with the artist kind of thing, but then also like a full band performance, like 3 or 4 songs they recorded, also in that same in our space theater in our tilted dome. And then again, just some other it's a little hard to see, but some behind the scenes stuff. And continuing with filming, like we run presentations, run filmings, but like we can also be a filming location about those things. So we were reached out to by the production team behind First Man, the Neil Armstrong movie. After the movie came out, they do a press junket. So basically, Damien Chazelle and Ryan Gosling, they would like travel to city, and they would bring in like 20 members of the media in that city, and they would interview them and talk to them and all that. And so we hosted that, and we got to pretty simple, pretty simplistic from a graphics perspective, right? It's Neil Armstrong, so they want the moon, they want the movie logo, stuff like that. But there are all these circulating options of places to get yourself in front of people in new and unexpected places. Last thing I want to talk about real quick, this is actually the oldest of these. This was like 10 years ago, but we were the launch location for the global launch event for the 30th Air Jordans. So this is 2016. This was 2 live-streamed broadcasts. Nike and Jordan Brand brought in like influencers, and there's like Tinker Hatfield, who's the shoe designer. They did this just big, like huge multimedia production in our theater. They made like a museum of all the previously released Jordans and set that up in our lobby and did a lot of cool stuff. And you're probably not going to be able to read all of this text, and these are, again, like 10-year-old numbers. But the point of this is, like, doing these things, you're going to get hundreds of thousands, millions, tens of millions. Maybe you're going to get a lot of eyes on you and eyes on your content from doing these things. And like I said at the beginning, it's a lot. Don't feel like oh, my God, I can never do all this. Like, just start. Take a small step, clear the first bar, and just keep one foot in front of the other. So, cool. I don't know where I'm at on time, but cool. I'm actually, I can call it here, but if there's like any questions or anything, we can.
All right, let's give him a round of applause first of all. Thank you, Mike. Do we have any questions for Mike? All right, I'll ask a question. Do you, with the diversity of things that are kind of coming at you, is there a little bit of that, like you're a little scared at first because you have to figure out how you're going to make it all work, or is that something that you're getting used to as you do more things?
It's, I mean, you get used to it, and obviously you get like your successes in your back pocket and stuff like that. But there are also things like, so for example, the really simple, like, oh, we'll do a concert and we'll like fly around the universe, or we'll fly around the solar system or whatever. You could do that like twice, maybe 3 times before people can come back and be like, oh yeah, it's the same thing. We're just, listening to different music while we like fly to the moon and Mars. So like, there's definitely like opportunities to just take those challenges and like drive yourself to, come up with new things and to like, push a little bit, do a little bit better. But I mean, there's always wild cards, and of course, like, and then we're also a planetarium 363 days a year, and we produce shows, and like, we do all this other stuff too. So there's, it's a good problem to get to a point where you have to kind of like be selective and think about it a little more carefully. But so sorry.
I just saw Aaron first, but there's time for both.
It was fairly quick. I was just curious, with some of these groups coming in where you're having these external lightings on them, how much of it is them coming in with their own equipment, or is there anything that you have on hand?
No, so it's pretty much all them. Like, it's a really convenient to be like, sorry, we're a planetarium, we don't have drum mics, we don't have spotlights, we don't, like, we're not a venue, like, we don't keep all that stuff on hand. So, but when they come in initially, whether it's like a filming location, like a filming manager for like a shoot, or it's like the people from the band or the radio station, whatever, it's just being clear and upfront with them, like, here's what we got, here's what we can support. We do have, like, in our big dome, we have a lot of like underfloor power. We have like an alternate lighting network, so if they do bring in like lights, they can control them from the back desk, things like that. So just being straight with them about like kind of what we can do, and so that it's setting expectations, right? You never want them to like show up day of and like here's our video, like let's. So yeah, just good open communication. So Eric.
Yeah, so just because you guys are the Adler Planetarium, so I assume a lot of the time these proposals come to you, but is there a way for you to get the name of your planetarium out there so that you can essentially try and manage proposals that wouldn't necessarily instinctively think of you and route them towards your planetarium?
Yeah, so what we do, and let me say, like, we don't like market ourselves for any of this stuff. We have like a page on our website under like our event rentals that has these sorts of things. And I was like, hey, doing like a film shoot. You want to do it? Like that's just like a list and some pictures of some of the ones we've done in the past. Like that is the extent of our like marketing and outreach on this. So again, a little bit of an upfront time and cost to put that together. But yeah, like we're not like going hard, like pushing ourselves for this sort of stuff. So things like that, obviously, a lot of planetariums are also able to like manage their own social media platforms, their own presences. Outreach to, and the other thing I'll say is like making sure that you're like, even beyond your employees, like if you're in a situation where you have like a board of trustees or like other people, or like a donor circle, a philanthropy group. We were chatting with, so we recently we have a new CEO who started at the Adler this week. And I had kind of a cross paths with our board chair at one of the events announcing our new CEO like a couple months ago. And I just kind of mentioned offhand some of these things that we're doing. And it's like, oh, I had no idea. So again, like finding the places to make, build advocates for yourself, right? Like find people that will be excited to hear the things that you're doing, and then we'll also go out and like carry that message out for you. So.
I just have a quick comment. We are in the process of writing resources of how we actually support these kind of events for all of you. It'll be in some of the newsletters, the next coming newsletters, or the planetarium pointers thing that we just talked about yesterday. Thank you.
Yeah, keep an eye out on this.
We're unfortunately out of time, but if you want to give Mike one more round of applause, please feel free to talk to him afterward. Thank you, Mike.
Hey, thanks, y'all.
All right, who's up first?
attached.
What do I do? You're gonna play from the beginning. Is there a? Do you have notes? Oh, it's already there. Okay. And then just click right in.
All right. I'm just gonna trip over things.
Okay. Do you want me to advance or do you want to?
What?
Do you want me to advance or do you want to?
You can advance.
Okay.
I'm going to give a 2-minute warning,
Okay.
and then when I stand up, your time will be over, but continue if you want to go into your questions.
Okay. Perfect. All right. And then you should be on this side.
All right, everybody. Our next speakers are Minnesota locals, Minnesota State University Moorhead. Please, everybody, welcome Cassie Ishag and Sarah Schultz. This is Embracing the Adventure, Benefits of Planetarian Exchange.
Hello, I'm Cassie Esog, and this is my lovely previous boss, Sarah Schultz. I am a recent graduate of Minnesota State University Moorhead. I graduated in May with 2 degrees. I received a BA in Spanish and a BS in teaching English as a second language. I also got summa cum laude in both degrees, which, thank you. I hilariously did not find out until a couple days later because they didn't tell me. And I didn't walk at graduation because, as we'll find out, I was across an ocean. But anyway, this presentation is called Embracing the Adventure. Yeah, I am from Minnesota, obviously, and I went to Spain. How did I get there? Lovely question. One of my degrees is in teaching. I had the opportunity to go to Spain and complete part of my student teaching. I had always wanted to travel. I've never been anywhere. And my first time, I went from 0 to 100. I went across the world by myself for 3 months. Yeah, it was a lot at first, but luckily I had a connection with a couple people. The school that I was at was wonderful. There was a student who had come to my high school from Spain, and I was in contact with his mother and later met him. I had never met him before, I just knew his mother. Weird, but anyway. But that's how I ended up in Spain. And then Sarah's gonna tell you how I ended up at the Madrid Planetarium.
So, of course, she tells me that she's got to do her student teaching for an entire semester, so I'm not going to get to have her in my planetarium. And then she tells me she's going to Spain, and now I'm really not going to get to have her in my planetarium. And I said, well, first of all, take me with. Second of all, no. And third of all, is there a planetarium in Spain? So we looked. I wasn't aware, but there is the Madrid Planetarium. And so I said, you know what, Cassie? What if we connected you with that planetarium and you got to do some work there? How cool would that be? So we did some digging and we made some connections and we connected with Telmo at the Madrid Planetarium. And Cassie's going to tell you how that went.
Yeah. Also, the last question is, why did I do this? Simple, why not? Like, I was there, just why not? If you have the opportunity, just do it. So I got in contact, or Sarah got in contact with Telmo. We met up via Zoom, and then we made the plan that I was going to do an internship. And then I continued to stay in contact with him, got in contact when I landed in Spain. And I was coming from the Minnesota State University Moorhead Planetarium, which, as you can see, is small. And I went to a planetarium that was in the second largest metropolitan area in the entire European Union. It was a large difference. But it was a wonderful chance to experience how differently you can engage an audience in different spaces. And I got to learn from the people at the planetarium on how to do that in both public shows and school shows. I'm sure you have already read this. Our community is approximately 255,000, and theirs is 6.8 million. Just a small difference. Anyway, we'll keep moving on. These are just some pictures of the planetarium that I took while I was there. It's not just a planetarium. They have beautiful gardens outside and a monument to one of the people who helped push forward the ventures of the city. And that's what this is down here. And then this is their star ball in the center. They have a mixture of projectors and the star ball. While I was there, the star ball was having some problems, so they weren't using it very much. They had someone come in after I left to fix it, but I digress. They had a museum as well as the planetarium. So this was their previous their previous star ball, and it was in use for 30 years, and they just recently switched over to their new one. And then this is, I don't know if you can see it, I'm in the way. This is a picture of the Andromeda Galaxy taken by a Madrid native, but it's in California. That's where it was taken from. And it's from a exhibit called Colors of the Deep Sky. And there were so many pictures, astrophotography pictures of different deep sky, deep space images. And it was amazing to see all of the people that would come in, kids or adults, and just look and read about the different things that they could see in the sky. They had a little replica of the Perseverance rover and a Mars, which was really fun to see. And then one of the first ever spacesuits ever. It was it's actually a replica. If you want to hear more about what happened to the original, come find me after. It's a crazy story. And an exhibit dedicated to the science and art of the previous moon landings and the ones that are happening, which is where I spent most of my time presenting. So what I did while I was there, I spent a lot of time talking with the people who were presenting and working there. We exchanged and compared information that we had based on our time working there. So it was really interesting to see how culturally different the education is for astronomy in the States versus in Spain. And I presented bilingually in mostly the museum portion, because while I was there, they were filming a movie because they also do movie production. And so a bunch of their people were gone one day, so I was just kind of thrown in the deep end. And I was okay with that. But I presented like my second day there, and that was fun. I also shadowed and aided in a lot of events. Here are some of my key takeaways. I don't know why that formatted weird. Sorry. A lot of their things were personal to the students because they came in through the main door, they see a panorama of where they just came in on the dome. So immediately they know where they are. It's interactive. They use Kahoot on the dome. And even for the little kids, they can still do it because the teachers of each class get colored note cards or like colored paper so they can all play. And then it's meaningful because this was one of my favorite things. It was a Earth that showed the pole and then rotated with the North Star. Yep, next one. And then this is a video of the Kahoot that we'll just skip. And then these are some of the ways that if you want to go and travel, you can see other planetariums. You can DIY, do it yourself, like I did, where you just like reach out and go. Or you can do the IPS a weekend program. Or
Well, first you need to talk about that nothing compares.
oh, true. So in my opinion, nothing compares to a firsthand experience because you're never gonna know unless you go.
So the last thing, and the main reason I'm just still standing up here, is that we are working on the Planetarian Exchange Program. If you haven't heard of that yet, please get involved. We'd love to have be able to exchange ourselves amongst our area. So some of us are very excited about that, and if you would like to also get involved, you can use the QR code, because we would like to make this kind of opportunity more openly available to everyone.
Yeah. And the last slide is just questions and fun pictures of me.
Great. Well, let's give a big thank you to Cassie and Sarah. Great job. I've been to Spain, but now I have another planetarium to add to my list of places to visit, so we'll make sure we do that. Do we have any questions for Cassie or Sarah about any of their presentation? Oh, yep, Mike.
Are you multilingual, or were you doing English? Did you have a translator? How did that work?
I did all of the presentations except for one in straight Spanish. One of the classes was a bilingual school, so I was able to do a mixture of English and Spanish.
Yes.
Two questions, one for you and then one for the room. First question is, what's the term that you're envisioning in exchange to take?
It's really going to depend on the person who wants to go and the host. Ideally, it would be at least a few days to maybe a week, but it really depends on what works for the people who are involved. So.
Okay, thank you. And then a question for the room. For those of you who are interested in exchanging, would you be interested in going to a place that does not have a planetarium like Kitt Peak National Observatory, which does operate outreach?
So I'm going to answer that question just from some of the conversations I've had. We're thinking about potentially having different types of tracks. So maybe like a visualization, or maybe something that's specifically outreach and things like that. So that is something we're certainly considering, and we would love people to share that feedback with us so that we can design the program accordingly.
We've got time for one more. Any other questions? All right, well, let's give them another thank you for telling us about their experience. Thank you very much.
Yes. Lake Erie Nature and Science Center. Got it. I think I'm early though. Sweet. Sweet. I'm gonna finish early too.
All right, well, we're so on time, we might as well get to it and then give Katie some extra time before we take a little break. So this is, we're about to start Unique Universe, the public show for ages 7 and up. This is Katie Downing from the Lake Erie Nature and Science Center. Give her a big round of applause.
Did I do it? Does it work? Awesome. I'm gonna hold it. I got it. I figured it out. It's still morning, right? Good morning.
My name is Katie Downing. I am the Planetarium and Programming Coordinator at Lake Erie Nature and Science Center. We are outside of Cleveland on the west side in Bay Village. The only picture I could find was of my museum in snow. So sorry about that. But we are open 7 days a week, and our primary audience is preschool age and up. Most of my shows are for 0 to 3-year-olds, 0 to 7-year-olds. But we found out that we had a need for a new show that was for a little bit older friends. So before I move on, though, this is Marcy the opossum. Can you figure out why her name is Marcy? Because possums are marsupials. Marcy the marsupial. We have a lot of puns. So we do preschool. We have 4 preschool classrooms operating all the time. We have animal exhibits indoors and outdoors. A lot of our animals are wildlife rehabilitation patients. You have to come visit us because we just finished a $1.8 million renovation of our backyard. So the bald eagle has a new place to live. The owls and the crows and all sorts of stuff. I don't have any pictures of that, but because this is planetarium, but I have to brag about the animals. Okay, so our planetarium, we like alliterations in our show titles. We started with Twinkle Tots and Stellar Stars. For a while, we had a show running called Mini Missions, and now we have Unique Universe. I mean, even the wildlife program, Wonders of Wildlife. The only one that's not an alliteration is Sky Tonight, which I couldn't come up with something for that one. I don't know. So Twinkle Tots, see the conference proceedings from many years ago. I did a presentation on Twinkle Tots. I also did a presentation on Stellar Stars. So I got lots of that. Twinkle Tots is like 20 minutes long. There's lights and music and the stars and the moon, and we're done. It is short, sweet, and to the point. The whole purpose of Twinkle Tots is to teach kids that the planetarium is a fun place to be, and you will come back when you can sit still longer and learn more. When you're 0 to 3, that's all you need, right? Stellar Stars, we go through a planet a week. So it's actually a 12-week rotating schedule. We hit all 8 planets, the sun, asteroids, dwarf planets, and comets. That's how you get to 12. Along with the constellation of the day. Sky Safari. Sky Safari's not here. That was last year's presentation. But Unique Universe is the new one. So Unique Universe stemmed from the fact that kids were aging out. When they weren't aging out of Stellar Stars, I've had a 3-year-old that's done Stellar Stars twice. She's gone through all 12 shows twice and collected her little passport. But the kids are asking questions about the weird things in space. You know, where are those black holes? What's a quasar? I heard the word pulsar. What is that? So we decided to create a new show based on the weird things outside of the solar system, and all the topics come from the questions that the kids have asked us about. So we got Digistar 7 last September, and fooling around with Digistar, we discovered that there are actually models for a lot of these weird things, and that helped us create our Unique Universe show. So we start Unique Universe, it's all live, all of our shows are live. We start Unique Universe by showing the galaxy. Stellar Stars, we start by looking at the solar system. Unique Universe, we start by looking at the galaxy, and we have the little circle for what's in the middle of the circle there? Us! You're there. And we reiterate that all the things that we're talking about are not in that, most of them are not in that circle except for exoplanets. Most things are not in that circle. So we have to leave our solar system to learn about some of these weird things. So I asked my staff to send me pictures of what they were talking about this week. And this week was supernovas and supernova remnants. Because kids are always asking about when's the sun going to explode, right? Never. Hopefully not. So we talked about supernova remnants, supernova, and we were able to show like where all the known supernovas are. I don't know, they were putting up, they just sent me pictures, okay? And so basically what we talk about is we talk about what is it, how did we find it, how do we study it, and why is it cool, or why is it interesting, why is it weird, that kind of stuff. So I am about to show you a dirty behind-the-scenes picture of how we keep all of this organized with our little dry erase board on the wall. This is, yes, it's our handwriting. This is how we keep track of what our topics are every week. That's the thing about all of our shows is the topics change every single week. Twinkle Tots is 10 different shows, Stellar Stars is 12 different shows, and Unique Universe is 9 different shows. Sky Safari is 11 different shows. So we're rotating everything all the time. So all these repeat preschoolers are getting the same format show, but different content every time. So then, you know, I have to have the constellation of the day. So the constellation of the day for Unique Universe relates to where you're going to find some of these deep sky objects. It rotates with the seasons mostly. This is kind of a fall into winter kind of snapshot. But, you know, we reiterate, you're not going to see a black hole with just your eyes. But if you look in the direction of Gemini, you're looking towards a black hole. You're not going to see, you could see some double stars, like Algol. So we do point out that in Perseus. You do see star clusters with just your eyes, but like you're not going to see an exoplanet with just your eye. But if you look towards Virgo, you're looking towards some exoplanets. So this content is definitely for a little bit older friends. We say 7 and up, but it's really anyone who can sit still for 30 minutes and ask questions. Really, it's more of the sitting still than the age. Because like I said, I've got 4-year-olds in this show that absolutely love it. Now, some of these topics might sound scary to some of your presenters, so how do you build presenter confidence with some of this stuff? Remember, you're playing Are You Smarter Than a 10-year-old with some of this stuff. We are not doing dissertations. We are not, it's a 30-minute show from when they come in to when they leave. We're not going into great detail. We're just doing surface level, this is what it is, this is how we found it, this is a picture of it, this is why it's cool, and black holes aren't roaming around the universe trying to suck you up or something like that. So what we do is we have a shared Google Doc. We have myself, I'm full-time, and then I have 3 part-time presenters. We have a shared Google Doc where we all take notes. Every time somebody learns something new about pulsars, they add it to the shared notes. And this is a show where we do have to read our notes before we present. It's not one of those we can just press play in our brains. We do have to read our notes first. We also have a shared list of like videos or documentaries to watch. There was a great PBS one. I don't remember what, but it's on the list somewhere. And then we do have meetings to just go over content. So really, we build each other up. We share what we learn. And again, it's nothing intense. It's just, kids ask us about black holes, so let's make a show about black holes. Kids ask us about quasars, let's make a show about quasars, even though they're kind of the same thing. But they're really far away and really bright. And that's the difference, So there we go. That's Unique Universe. We have a lot of fun. It's only been going since our debut was in January, so it's been going 10 months now. So it's been pretty successful. I didn't put the collector's card in there. They collect stickers for all the things that they learn about, and you get a little observing sky guide book if you go to all 9 shows, because we like repeat offenders. But thank you very much.
Great job. Thank you, Katie. I see a question over here already.
Uh-oh.
very enthusiastic hand.
I would like to know how long it takes typically to put together a show and have it ready to like present, and like how much work do you put into each one of these? Because you have 9 different ones, so how much effort does that take?
So so we got, from September when we got Digistar to January, we were learning Digistar, but we were also figuring out what components can we use to make a show, and like what models Digistar had helped us decide what our topics were. So it took us a good chunk from September to January just to come up with like the first 2 shows. And I will fully admit, when it debuted, I was still working on show 3 and show 4 and beyond. We were taking it 1 week at a time. But that initial like 6 months or so, it wasn't 6 months, but that initial like 4 or 5 months was just planning it. We don't do anything like super amazingly cool. We don't do like scripting or anything. It's very basic. We want to move it farther, but this is like version 1, where it's just like, here's some pictures, here's a model, I'm gonna tell you some stuff, and let's fly home.
Cool. I have a follow-up question real quick.
Yes.
Do you have a like framework for your shows, like like you said, how they kind of all have the same structure that you can share? And do you have your collector's cards and those types of things, that type of stuff to share, like resources and stuff that you will share?
Not immediately, but I can make that happen.
All right, next up was Diana.
2-part question. How long does each topic within this show run for? Is it like a week, a day?
So we are actually down to doing Unique Universe only on Saturdays.
Okay.
So
So
last
it'd be one
Saturday,
topic on
yeah,
Saturday
last
and then
Saturday
one-
was supernovas. This Saturday is black holes. Next Saturday is elliptical galaxies.
Okay.
Did I get that right?
Yeah. And then do the kids know
Pulsars.
which topic they're going to be walking into, or is that secret for when they arrive?
That's a sore subject. Because it's the same thing with Stellar Stars. Because with Stellar Stars has a much more hardcore following about like, I need my Uranus sticker to get the prize bag. And for a very long time, we've been trying to get at least the topics on our website. But our marketing team says that's a lot harder to do than we first thought. So now if they're looking for a specific topic, they call my office and I check the schedule and tell them. Most folks don't mind it being a surprise, except for like the one kid who's looking for the one sticker to finish the thing.
Other questions for Katie? All right, then let's give her a nice round of applause. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you so much.
At this point, we are in a coffee break until 11 o'clock, so please get back here a couple minutes before, and we'll get our next speaker up and running. All right, everybody, we're going to get started in another minute or so. If you could please take your seats and settle in. All right, for the second half of our morning paper sessions, our first talk is Active Learning in the Planetarium by Raymond Zeke from Illinois State University. Let's give Raymond a warm welcome.
Okay, there we are. Let me start off. We're going to talk about active learning in planetarium. And let me ask you, especially the directors and training people, when you have a new operator, a new presenter, what is it that you do with them? How do you get them up to speed? This is audience response here. Yeah? Okay, that's a good answer. That's the one that I was looking for. Lots of practice, and that's the key here of active learning, which I'm going to be talking about. Now, I got into this by, I started education research, physics education research, and started studying teaching methods, and then I learned of the benefits of what's called active learning, which is essentially a lot of practice, and also encountered formal versus informal learning styles. So in setting up for this talk, I started looking at different things. Traditional planetarium presentations, and I will admit that I am old, traditional planetarium presentations tend to be informal learning and passive learning, where the audience comes in and sits there, and then they see a presentation. They don't have a lot of input, but then they go away. So, looking at these categories here, informal learning is interest focused. It's trying to generate interest. It's not goal focused. There is no final end to this. It's serendipitous and spontaneous. It is very unstructured. There's no formal setup or plan for this. There's usually no formal instructor or director. There may be a presenter, but not necessarily a formal instructor running things. And lots of times it's entertainment connected. It may not be pure entertainment, but it's entertainment connected. Formal learning is much more, well, formal. It's goal-focused, it's planned. There is a structured environment that you're going through when you're doing this, and there's generally an instructor or leader who's keeping things moving in the right direction. One of the big things about formal learning is that it is about generating a learner identity. An identity as, let's say, a physicist, an astronomer, a planetarian, but generating an identity so that you think of yourself as something. And certification, like a degree or a certificate of some kind, may be involved. Now, passive learning is how I came up and how I learned things, which is the learner is a recipient or a receptacle. And one of the analogies that is often used about passive learning is that of a sponge, where the student is likened to a sponge soaking up water or soaking up knowledge. And then when there is squeezing by a quiz or a test or some sort of performance activity, they reproduce this, or the water gets squeezed out. It's the learner does not actively participate in the learning process, which sounds a little counterintuitive, but they mostly just absorb. It's instructor-centered, and there's a lot of one-way communication rather than a show or a lecture. It relies an awful lot on memorization, either during the presentation or sitting there later looking at things to memorize. It is very, very efficient. You can cover a lot of material in a short period of time with passive learning. It's just how fast you can click through the slides or write on the board in olden days. Active learning, the learner actively participates. There's a lot of feedback, and that's what I started off with a little bit. I was a little chagrined this morning going over this and saying, wait, I'm talking about the benefits of active learning, and I'm just going to stand here and have them do nothing, and there will be a quiz later, by the way. But the learner actively participates. There's two-way communication. The learners are putting together their own learning through working with the concepts or practicing on the console, sort of thing. There's two-way communication here, back and forth feedback, and the learners are engaged. They become part of the presentation, part of the show, part of the class. So, benefits of active learning are that it is effective in either formal or informal scenarios. There's better engagement of the students and greater enthusiasm. There's a lot deeper understanding because the students are working with the concepts. So they actually have to do something with it, and it develops critical thinking skills because they have to figure out how to get from here to there, which is working their way through some kind of task or application. And as a result of the fact that they're working with it, there's a lot longer retention, excuse me. So now we're to why active learning. And the traditional answer to why is what? Your turn. What's the traditional answer to why? Why not? Yes, why not? The second traditional answer is because. But thank you. The answer is why not? Why not is that you lack certain things when you do passive learning. It's efficient. It's used a lot in different schools because you can get through material in a particular time, a lot of material. But in general, why you can do a lot more when the learning process is active learning at the end of it. You can analyze, you can push forward, you can come up with new concepts, you can do synthesis, you remember a lot more and can explain a lot more. With passive learning, first of all, you don't remember as much, but you can regurgitate. When the sponge is squeezed, you get to regurgitate what you know. You can do demonstrations or parrot explanations. So we want to do active learning if we can because the students have essentially better learning, longer retention, and deeper understanding. Now, where does that work for planetariums in public shows? First of all, engage the audience, which is what I was trying to do a little of here. And I remember especially last night in the sponsor presentations, there was a lot of engagement, getting feedback from the audience to continue on, to answer questions, that sort of thing. So one of the things that works with active learning in planetariums is you can ask questions either during or after. My preference is during the presentation. Get from the participants the most memorable idea or the general theme. Couple ideas are things like who can identify celestial objects, where you get the participants to point out things that you've been talking about. Constellation Shootout is one of these that you can have a modified version of them, not just line them up, but have a modified version where you ask them to look at the sky and then identify things that have been talked about or point out favorite objects. So, and this may be the most important part of the presentation. I ran across two old publications which are still available online as PDFs, the Planetarium Educators Workshop Guide, which works for school groups, and Activities for the School Planetarium by Malin. These are both still downloadable and have good stuff in them that can be used to get the school groups to participate. And school groups are a little different than a general population in this because it's easier to get them to do activities. So when a school group is there, there's an inflatable dome planetarium. Get the students to recapitulate or identify ideas from the show. They can talk to each other. They can talk to the presenter. And sometimes the teachers will be able to participate in this. Have them build a quadrant or an astrolabe, and they can make measurements of angles between objects. They can make measurements of how high objects are at different times and get a feel for what the sky is doing. One of the things they can do with either a protractor or an astrolabe is they can look at where the sun rises and sets, for example, at different seasons and see whether it's further north or further south. And then at its maximum, how high is it? There is another activity given by IPS on this sort of thing, which will occur in a later slide, but give them or show them a celestial sphere and have them relate the events and things on the celestial sphere to what they see on the dome. Just compare celestial events there. Can have them do, and I'm fair warning here, I'm not going to be able to cover all the possible active learning. I even picked up one this morning from the presentations here. But a Hertzsprung-Russell diagram tour for this. And invent new constellations. We had a discussion last night, I think, about Klingon constellations. All right, there's the IPS activity that they were, that I told you that they were touting, where the students measure the angle and look at where the energy is spread out. Hello. There. And you can use the center of the center projector as a stand-in for the sun and do things like the solar system and zodiac or seasonal constellations. When I did this, I got a strong, both from formal classes and informal classes, a strong sense of buy-in from the students. They formed communities, they talked with each other inside and outside of presentations. So, all right, thank you. I will try and answer questions if there's any time for them. So.
We do have time. Let's give Raymond a round of applause, first of all. Thank you. Wonderful. We do have time for a couple questions.
And if you cannot read it, said if people sat outside and looked at the stars each night, I'd bet they'd live a lot differently. So.
Wonderful. Here.
What is your largest challenge for using instrumentation in the dome? Starting to think about astrolabs, and we use this navigation system. The issue is it's a simulator, so it's not the actual angle. Everyone's getting a different angle in the room. Measuring angular degrees between objects, you have to use the relative scale all the time. So what is your greatest challenge for designing tools or equipment or manipulatables that students use in a simulator of the universe and not the real universe?
The greatest challenge I have experienced in that is having enough for everyone, even using small groups. I look more for trends than actually defining the exact angle between two objects or the exact compass position where the sun rises and sets, but looking for trends rather than exactness there. So those are how, at least how I address challenges. Having enough for everyone is a little more difficult. And also, if you're trying to get participation, you would prefer everyone to participate. And if you have a large school group, there may not be time for everyone to participate. But you try and get an atmosphere of, oh, it's us. We were giving feedback to the presenter.
All right, and that's all the time we have, but let's give another round of applause for Raymond. Zeke, thank you very much. Well done. All right, our next speakers, we have Jason Kaufman and John Jensen from Inver Hills Community College. A planetarium-based intervention can promote meaning in life with a single session. Let's welcome John and Jason.
Hi, it's still morning, so good morning. Quick show of hands. How many of you, who in here has ever sat around a campfire under a starry sky, looked up and just kind of wondered, pondered? Yeah, kind of thought so. You're our people. How many of you have been under a sufficiently dark, starry sky where you can stand there outside, look down and see your shadow by galaxy light? Yeah, excellent. So we're a little biased here. We are both psychological scientists, and to paraphrase Isaac Asimov for a sec, we've had these experiences and we've thought, that's funny. And so let's look into that. Why is there so much meaning to be had? Why do we question things when we're under the stars?
So we've been collaborating on research for over 10 years at this point. And one of the focuses that we'll have towards the end of this is the concept of collaborating with other planetariums to carry out the same research. But originally we started research in the area of mindfulness, of guided visual imagery, working with students. How can students improve their success? How can students improve their life? How can they improve how they feel about themselves, improve executive functioning? And all of this has a scientific basis in guided imagery. So we started with that and worked with students, and then we started to add in the concept of nature. How can we integrate nature into our research to further impact the imagery that we're using? And I think that is probably what led to the idea of the cosmic perspective. So cosmic perspective, of course, I'm sure you're aware, astronauts come back and they have a whole different view and a different mindset. And how can we introduce some of that concept of awe, some of the concept of humility into this research, again, to further impact the connection that students are having with the mindfulness training. One of the problems that you run into here in Minnesota, at least where we both teach, is you're limited. We both teach in the cities, so you're limited with light pollution, and then also it's Minnesota, so you're limited in the winter with introducing a nature experience when you can't always go outside. So one of the things that we considered in this process is to do this in a planetarium and to create an immersive environment within a planetarium that could enhance the mindfulness training that we're working on. Yeah.
And then I'll just ask, in addition, show of hands if you're familiar with the monomyth, right? The hero's journey tale. Yeah, so this is something that we see literally in every culture around the globe since the inception of recorded history. And, you know, when the entire world, when all the peoples are talking about the same thing, this notion that to really evolve as an individual to your fullest potential, you have to go through some kind of challenge, which is not entirely unlike a dissertation or other graduate degree, then you go to that next step. And these are three bodies of really hardcore research, some writing, and then just a ton of mythology. But the challenge is, like John was saying, we're in Minnesota. How do you get to a dark sky? And this is a big one, how do you make it accessible? Not everybody has the geographic and or financial means to access what is really woven into their genetic and epigenetic codes of a positive response under the stars. And that's where the planetarium can come in, we think, really beautifully. So here's what we did in partnership with our wonderful colleagues, looking at Tad over here, who's awesome. And then, yeah, my picture sucks too, no offense. And then, that was priceless. And then Sally and just our wonderful partners at the planetarium here in town, but we designed a tripartite intervention. So first, we spent about, after welcoming our subjects to the dome, and to be clear, this is a pilot study. This has never been done, nothing like it's been done. We ended up with 18 faculty and staff. That was our population of interest because we could get them. They came to the planetarium one evening, months of prep in advance, lots of scheduling. We settled down, the lights went down, the stars came up, the crickets in the prairie audio came out low in the background to make it as immersive as possible. And then Tad led them through a very curated 20 to 25 minute script of orienting them and inadvertently, intentionally, relaxing all of these individuals, really focusing up to the night sky. At which point then we led them through about 15 minutes of guided visual imagery, which is, think of a cross between standard meditation and more formalized clinical hypnosis. And so you can pack a lot of punch, but the goal is to motivate both a deep relaxation response as well as a real focusing and softening of effortless attention. All under the dome, with the stars, with the crickets, immersed among colleagues, and just settle, like many of you are doing now, right? Because we know that experience. And then we pepper it with some hypnotic suggestions around meaning in life, and figuring out your place in the cosmos. And then gently the lights come up, we take a real quick bio break because they were pretty relaxed, and then we went back to one of the classrooms and we used this really slick instrument and method that's been designed just a few years ago, like in 2022, 23, taking the hero's journey and then empirically converting it into both a scale and a paper and pencil reflective writing exercise. It's some of the most creative research we've seen in years. And so it was a 3-piece process of planetarium, imagery, and then taking about 40 minutes and writing and thinking as we guided them through these empirically validated prompts. Now, that's what we want you to remember. We're gonna just fly through the results because surprisingly it all worked. So I'm not gonna get into the specifics, but here's what we did in a nutshell because of our limited time. We used the hero's journey scale as well as the meaning and life scale, the latter of which is a very well-known scale. These are paper and pencil, right? They both seek to look at meaning and life, and we were asking, was there a meaningful effect compared to 30 days before the planetarium, pre-testing, and then after the intervention, testing them again. And we thought there'd be something, but we found changes, growth. I know it says minus, but that's just an issue with the numerator because of how we did it. We found growth ranging from half of a standard deviation to nearly a full standard deviation. What does this mean from a clinical stance in real life? That's enough for people to feel. That's enough for them to be consciously aware of the difference. Mattering, which the research says repeatedly is the most central element or factor in experience of meaning in life day to day, essentially encapsulating the question of what's my role, what's my significance in the greater cosmos. We got a ridiculously clear signal. And then, because we were in a planetarium, and it's good to sell tickets in a planetarium, we used this Naukelidor instrument, which was developed 21 years ago. And it just looks at attachment to the night sky. And what we found was this beautiful response, spoiler alert, after spending a little time under the dome and relaxing and thinking about the meaning of life, people are way more attached to the night sky. Now, coming out in the future, we'll just give you another spoiler alert. We're not sharing the post-test data now, but what we found is 30 days after this experience, the effect stayed, which is kind of remarkable. That was not expected at all.
So yeah, that became the challenge is we can create change. We can create it in a classroom. It appears we can create it better with an immersive environment. And again, that included sound, a 360 sound, so you really got lost in the environment. And then that combined with the hero's journey stuff really made those changes last. Yeah, go ahead.
Pitch. Right, go for it.
Oh, no, you go ahead.
So yeah, we were practicing we're not very good pitchmen, but we would love to collaborate with all of you. This needs to be replicated and expanded so that we want to stay at the planetarium because we love the Macmillan people, but we want to do multi-site so that we can actually run this as an experimental design to look for both direct and interaction effects with this tripart intervention. And there's no great hurry. We're going to be working on this probably for the next couple of years. But if you are at all interested to talk about this, to collaborate, or just to geek out, please hit us up after this session block. And thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Jason and John. Well done. We do have some time for questions. Yeah.
Yeah. How much audience interaction occurred during these planetarium interactions?
It depends on your frame of reference, either none or a ton. Everyone was passive during the time under the dome, but they were also actively engaged in the guided visual imagery. So it was kind of an atypical, to riff, it was an atypical active learning, if you will. Everyone was deeply engaged, but they weren't speaking with us or with one another.
Thank you for this research. It's really incredible. I think it really unlocks, I think, what we've kind of hoped, that planetariums have this power to change the world. And, how do we, obviously, like, the research is ongoing, but I guess the pitchman is the problem, but how do we sort of awaken people to this power of immersive experiences to build empathy?
I think it starts by first streamlining the process. So it's I think more electronic, less written, maybe a little shorter, a little more accessible, and then that's where the collaboration comes in, widening, getting the participation of 18 into hundreds to see what can we do to expand that, and then ultimately, including that as maybe something a planetarium can offer, including the concept of mental health, of mental, self-growth into just the overall planetarium experience.
Yeah, just to be clear, we will travel for funding.
One over here.
So I have a brief question, but we'll carry on later. I'm local with you guys as well. So as an indigenous Turtle Islander, the planetarium was the Dakota cave that I talked about in the keynote. And if you went in there and it was watery, which is another zone of experience, that's definitely the journey. We didn't call it the Campbellian Jungian hero's journey, right? But that's the birth journey, or death, or both, right? Is it birth or death? Yes. So on the cave ceiling were the animal guides, you might say. I'm trying to make this question as fast as possible. I just want you to know you're walking in that ancient path, and that's part of why I try to do what I do. So my question has always been, when I give people that experience, we kind of go from alpha to maybe beta wave, theta wave, and or maybe REM. That's when you know you have snoring. But that's all good processing, right? If you want to stereotype as left brain, right brain, corpus callosum. I'd really like to follow up on what maybe your hypotheses are. You don't have to say it now, I know. But are you looking at perhaps, I was one of those university rats as a freshman where they hook electrodes to your head, give you an experience, and see how you respond. Anything like that?
Thank you very much for that. We would love to talk with you and work with you. My super brief answer as he approaches menacingly is that, especially if you look at some of the other research on adjacent topics, nothing brings someone out of a deeply relaxed state like an ambulatory EEG. So yes, I would absolutely we would love to be doing that. We even have some of the equipment, and people look absolutely ridiculous wearing it. I think for now, this would be very much paper and pencil and non-invasive to the process. And ultimately, I would absolutely love to be able to demonstrate this, like with QEEG, with wet data, all of these things. But what the challenge is, and we'll stop with this, the challenge is all of those things, as you know, they directly interrupt what I would say is a sacred experience. And so it's a matter of waiting maybe till the tech gets there. I think like those Aura rings and maybe some smartwatches and stuff might start to allow us.
All right, thanks very much, John and Jason, for a very informative talk. All right, ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker from the University of Minnesota, local, Sarah Devine, is going to be talking about sparking STEM curiosity, integrating astronomy with 4-H youth programming. Let's welcome Sarah Devine.
Good morning, everyone. I am Sarah Devine. I am now with University of Minnesota 4-H. I, for about a decade, worked with Sally here at the Bell Museum, so I am glad to be back with all of you who I've met before and glad to meet new people here back at GLPA. It's kind of like a little mini homecoming for me. But I kind of wanted to bridge where my passion is in astronomy and where I got my career start in planetariums with what I'm currently doing in 4-H, working with youth from kindergarten through 1 year past high school. Poll, how many of you are familiar with 4-H? Okay, is anybody willing to like describe what you think 4-H is or what 4-H is to you? You knew some people in high school who did it. Okay, that's where I started. I knew absolutely nothing about 4-H before I took the job. But 4-H is the largest youth-serving organization in the United States. It served just about 6 million youth across the country last year. And it's in every state in the U.S., and they're all based out of the state's land-grant universities. So here in Minnesota, our land-grant university is the U of M. So you have 4-H in your state, no matter where you are. Here in Minnesota, it is also in all 87 of our counties. And so I am dedicated to Anoka County, which is just north of where we are right now. And it has its roots in agriculture and livestock. Over 100 years ago, youth were more open to learning new methods and technologies and kind of exploring new ways and then bringing them to their family farms and implementing them. Then the adults were open to new ideas. So the idea of having youth learn by doing in the roots of agriculture and livestock is where you got started. But we are not agriculture and livestock. I can tell you that that's a cow and that's a sheep, and that's as far as I go in livestock. But we have 42 general projects in Minnesota and 11 animal science projects. So if there's something that your youth is interested in doing, there's a way to do it in 4-H. But I'm not a youth, and I love astronomy. So how do I get astronomy more into 4-H? 4-H uses the experiential learning model, and if you attended a few papers earlier this week, you may have heard of it. But the first step is to do. Well, that's not actually where the learning happens.
The youth do get to experiment and do the ideas and experience something, but the learning really happens in these reflect stages where they share what did they observe, and they are processing together in this reflect stage after they actually do the thing. And then we move into the apply stage. Can they generalize what they just learned? And we're hoping by going through the reflect stage and the first part of the apply stage that once they leave that experience, when they leave that 1 hour experience or go home or go back to their clubs or go back to their schools or funds, they can apply their learning in a new situation somewhere outside of the actual program. So in 4-H, we don't actually get to see the apply right away. That's where the retention, that's where the learning happens, where they can do it later. And that's where we're really hoping to build those skills and those interests in our youth. Now, this is a very effective model. 4-H has been using it for a long time. It's been studied in 4-H as well. We're part of University of Minnesota Extension here, so we are part of the university and have what we do based in research and best practices. But how do we get astronomy into this model? Because our apply stage in astronomy sometimes is literally astronomically far away. The youth can't do some of the things immediately, like they can learn how things work in the kitchen or how to, leavening agents in a food experiment. They can't do it right then and then make another batch next. So I was thinking about this, and 4-H is a volunteer-based organization. I am one of 2 educators in my county, and so we're only 2 full-time staff, but we have hundreds of youth. We have hundreds of volunteers. So we're there to support the program, to give new ideas, but then we are hoping that the volunteers will then take it and spread it out further. And also partnerships. Like you probably have lots of ideas, but you can't do them on your own. Maybe you are an only educator or only person in your dome, or you have a very small staff as well. So how do we work together to expand our reach, expand what youth can do, and our resources and capabilities together? So one thing, start where 4-H is. 4-H is really good at plant science. Well, how can we take that knowledge of 4-H and the comfort level of 4-H educators in plant science and push it into astronomy? Maybe like some of the science teachers that you work with, or the teachers you work that come to your planetarium, they're coming because they themselves feel uncertain or uncomfortable with science. They're coming to an expert. So how can we use the plant science comfort area and push it into astronomy? Well, we have the unique experience of being in a planetarium. They come to you. They can do a show. Maybe it's a show on life on the ISS. Maybe you're talking about how astronauts live or a deep space travel. What are they going to need in order to exist in space for a while? So they can do a show, and you can reflect on, well, what is the daily life of an astronaut going to be like? What are they going to eat? How would you feel if you only got to eat prepackaged things for trip to Mars 3 years or so? So then they can apply their knowledge of plant science, and then in the new context of space travel, and they can learn more about like the Veggie Project, for instance. So we can expand that, and they can apply it, and they can go do experiments in this new context. So just one idea that I have of how can we get more astronomy into 4-H learning. 4-H also has a project area on photography, where they are specifically learning about the art and science of photography, the basic equipment, exposure, lighting, photo manipulation. Does this sound familiar to anybody? We have those gorgeous pictures from space, from our rovers. They all need analysis. They all need to be interpreted. So how can we do this? This can be a fun during the photography project, but then give the subject matter of astronomy. So we have several online resources. The Cosmic Coloring Compositor, has anybody used this before? It's really fun, and it's been around for a while, so it's NRAO. So they give you an image, and then you can play with little toggles on the side in different colors, and if you want different wavelengths, and then they can save it as a picture. So this could be a very short interaction. Maybe you're doing a planetarium show on colors of light, or maybe you're doing how do we see what we see. So they're experiencing, but then they can go do this too. So this can be part of the do and reflecting stage. Oh, what did we learn about X-ray light? What did we learn about infrared light? And they can layer those on. So this is a fun thing on NRAO's website, so I encourage you to do it, and then you could download it and save it as your screen saver, your wallpaper, or something like that. There's also NASA's Astrophoto Challenge. Right now it's still saying their winter 2005 or 2025 challenge is over, so I don't know in our current state if that's coming back. But NASA has an astrophoto challenge, so this stuff is already out there. How do we connect it? You don't have to develop the curriculum or develop the project and stuff. These resources are already on there. They're online, so you don't have to worry about the equipment and having enough, because kids already have access, one-to-one devices at school and all online-based things. Astrophoto Challenge also works closely with the NASA Micro Observatory, so it's very similar to Skynet Junior Scholars, which I did when I was at the Bell Museum. And so learning about filters, how to read a star map, how to do exposure time, all these key photography learnings in any part of photography, but applying it to space. So when I did Skynet Junior Scholars, here's are two of my students' images. And they were actually published in one of the University of Minnesota alumni magazines and taken to a 4-H showcase and won awards for it. So again, these are student things based on Skynet Junior Scholars. It's been around for a while. It was developed as a 4-H program, and it's a lot of fun. They have a lot of lessons already in their platform for you, so you just have to use their slideshows, use their materials, and if you want to augment them, go for it. I loved doing the Skynet Junior Scholars, so if you have any questions to this, it's so much fun. But also the 4 H's in 4-H. Ron, you were starting it. Our hands, heart, head, and health. So thinking about critical thinking, how are we using our head? How are we taking care of our emotions and social emotional learning with our heart? How do we serve our communities with our hands? And how do we stay healthy? So those are the 4 H's in 4-H. How do we apply it then to deep space travel? The 5 hazards, I think this would be a really fun way to do it, is the 5 hazards of space travel. We could address each one. You could maybe investigate the science behind space radiation. And then you could reflect on it. How does it apply to us here on Earth? And then how can you go see it? And they can go do it and apply it by looking for the northern lights or tracking sunspots. Isolation and confinement, combining the project areas of 4-H health and wellness with the social emotional learning that 4-H is really, really good at. But leadership, how would you survive on a simulated like Mars experience to show how would you survive on the way to Mars? But then also our brains need stimulation. Like if we're on an isolated and confined spacecraft that's not changing for years, how do we keep our brains, how do astronauts keep their brains sharp and engaged? And so Minnesota 4-H has a brainwaves curriculum about neuroscience. That's about 17 lessons currently, and I know they're adding 2 more. Changing gravity fields. How do astronauts maintain their physical fitness? Well, there's the Train Like an Astronaut lessons online. They have the adaptive resources too. So if you have to have an audience that can't maybe do one particular activity, they already have those adaptive strategies in those Train Like an Astronaut lessons. And of course, the hostile and enclosed environments. You can learn about microbes. This is health and wellness, safety, viruses, treating injuries and illness while on a mission, or address the physical needs of an enclosed living space, like designing the environment with optical lighting, sound, air conditions to promote astronaut health and mental well-being. This fits into the 4-H project area of home environment, designing your home environment. So I think there's a lot of crossovers that could be made, but I am only one person, and I would love to see how we could grow our expertise and passion with astronomy and push it into the various different areas of 4-H that I think could be really natural to do. So questions? Thank you.
All right, let's give Sarah a big round of applause. We do have time for a question or two. If anyone has questions for Sarah. No, not right now. Perfect. Well, I'm sure as they pop up, people would love to talk to you afterwards. So one more thank you to Sarah for coming and talking to us. All right, friends and colleagues, our last speaker of the paper session, certainly not least, Eric Briggs from Buffalo, New York, representing COSM. He's going to talk about astronomy clubs from the Canadian planetarium history. Let's give Eric a round of applause and welcome him.
All right. Thanks, Ryan. And I want to thank GLPA. So I am also here representing, I suppose, the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada. I'm the second vice president of the RASC for the time being. At COSM, I work on the service and training teams for Digistar. And this is a project, or a part of a project, that I started several years ago. At the RASC, I decided to use some of my expertise to write a history of Canadian planetariums. And it turned into a long essay, and then COVID happened, and I haven't actually finished it because I wanted to find out how it ends. There were a lot of changes going on, not just because of COVID, but also because of new developments with LEDs and so on. And I want to thank GLPA specifically for keeping old planetarium show scripts and materials on your website, because I was able to find out some ancient Canadian planetarium scripts, and that was really neat. And I'm also going to show a couple of the other resources that I've used during this project as well. The reason why I called this astronomy clubs is I went from top to bottom of the essay trying to find one or two smaller subjects that I would be able to actually bite off in the time available, and astronomy clubs was certainly one of them. But it's not the only thing we're going to be talking about today. All right. I want to start, first of all, with possibly the first planetarium in Canadian history. This is something that you can still buy today. The Trippensy Planetarium was developed by a man named Lang. He was born in Quebec, and after patenting his device in Canada, he also got it patented in the United States. This is one of the patent documents. And he manufactured it in Detroit, and he sold the company in 1905 to his employee, Frank Trippensy. And that's why the product is now called the Trippensy Planetarium. Over on the right is a shortly after developed knockoff. You can see it's perhaps not quite as well developed with gear trains and so on. And here's a little bit more information about a Trippensy planetarium if you haven't seen one on eBay or in a museum or something like that. But it's not really a planetarium. It's just called a planetarium, and it shows what planets do. If you hear many talks from some of my other colleagues from the RASC, you might hear the subject come up that the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada has been around for more than 150 years. I actually don't believe that. The RASC got its name originally in 1903, which is less than 150 years ago, and it didn't really resemble what we have today in Canada until many years after that. But before 1903, it was an astronomical society that was in Canada. So I guess there's something to that. Many years later, this planetarium was developed by a couple of guys in Brantford, Ontario, where the telephone had been invented several decades earlier. This is the Peerless Planetarium. And the Peerless Planetarium was not terribly successful, but moderately so at first during World War II. It was installed in 3 different locations in Canada, at Forest Hill Village Middle School in Toronto, which is actually where I went to school, Montreal Protestant High School, and Royal Roads Military College out in British Columbia. And I have one more slide or two about that. Here's their promotional material. Here is a cutting from the Journal of the RASC from 1945 talking about the Astronomy Club visiting the planetarium and what kind of experience they had there. The Peerless was sold to 2 different installations in the United States, one in Philadelphia and one in Puerto Rico. And the agent for that sale was Armand Spitz. I'm getting ahead of myself. But anyways, the page on the left is a page from Geared to the Stars, The Evolution of Planetariums by Henry King, who was later the director of the McLaughlin Planetarium in Toronto. So here's Armand Spitz, who we're very familiar with. And a few years earlier, Armand Spitz had written this book, The Pinpoint Planetarium, in 1940. The page on the right is the review of the Pinpoint Planetarium, once again from the Journal of the RASC. And I'm also really grateful for the NASA Smithsonian Observatory ADS website, where you can go on and look at a lot of historic astronomical papers and journal articles, including the entire archive of the JRASC. Okay, now we have a Spitz A1 being delivered to the Nova Scotia Museum of Science in 1950. The dome structure that you can see a little bit in the background there, that is a canvas or flannel dome. And it was stitched together by the same person who put together the sails for the recreation of HMS Bounty, which foundered a few years ago. But in any case, it is a sail-type planetarium dome. I believe it is still working. It was the last time that I had checked. It's moved around to a couple of different locations in Halifax. Maybe we could check with Jean Crichton about that. And it was also at the nucleus of the formation of the Nova Scotia Astronomical Association, which became the Halifax Center of the RASC. And it's still operated by volunteers from there. And this, I think, yes, this is from an official history of the society. All right, going across the country, this is Edmonton, and this is the Queen breaking ground for the Edmonton Planetarium. And I'm going to skip ahead one more page here. That's 1959. Then March of 1960. March 4th was the date that the Bruderheim meteorite fell outside of town. And Ian McLennan and Earl Milton, who were members of the RASC, found some pieces of it the same day. And that evening, they brought it to the Astronomical Society meeting, where they were talking about the opening of the planetarium plan for later that year. So that's like a pretty amazing story. Here's some more information and another clipping from the Astronomy Club newsletter. I've got great things to say about archival Astronomy Club newsletters. They are gold mines of sometimes really interesting information, depending on what you put into them. And after the Spitz projector was in there for a number of years, it was replaced with a Goto in 1968. It was closed a few years after that, and there is another planetarium in Edmonton now. However, this antique planetarium, if you can call it, the Queen Elizabeth Planetarium, has been reopened. We were going to be there for the IPS conference in 2020, but that ended up not really happening. Moving across country again to Calgary, this is the first large planetarium installation that was built in Calgary. That tower there ended up not being built. Roy Marshall from the Fells Institute consulted on this, and the telescope tower that they were going to build in the left slide, he said, yeah, you don't want to do that because telescopes on top of a tall tower will vibrate and they'll ruin the image. So they built an observing deck that you can make out just to the right of the telescope dome in the right slide. All right, I'm not going to talk maybe too much about the McLaughlin Planetarium in Toronto, but I have a few slides about it. The guy who's photobombing this shot is Terence Dickinson, the well-known Canadian astronomy author. This was his first job at the opening of the planetarium. He was hired or recruited by Henry King from the RASC. And Dr. King also got the RASC to hold their meetings in the lecture hall in the basement of the planetarium. And he made one of the spaces in the planetarium available to the RASC to host their mirror grinding lab for many years. McLaughlin Planetarium was closed in 1995. The building is still there, but it's just an empty shell. All right, now here we are in Quebec. So I'm going to try and read this to you folks, and you can translate. You probably don't need to translate it because I've written it out in English here. Le frais d'adhésion pour un individu dans le SAPM, c'est $50, not $45, $50. L'adhésion donne accès gratuit au planétarium et autres avantages, mais l'adhésion d'autres clubs pourrait coûter plus cher et ne pas donner de privilèges au planétarium. La Fédération des astronomes amateurs du Québec inclut aussi le Club d'astronomie de Dorval. La Société royale d'astronomie du Canada a un centre montréalais majoritairement anglophone et la Société d'astronomie de Montréal aussi connue sous le nom Société royale d'astronomie Centre francophone de Montréal. All right. Naming stars. All right, this is getting away from the astronomy clubs thing, but I spoke to Scott Young at the Manitoba Museum Planetarium in Winnipeg while I was doing research for this, and I asked him about their Say It With a Star program that I think I'd read about in one of their newsletters. So Say It With a Star allows you to dedicate a star that is projected from their Spitz Mark 6 projector onto the dome. It doesn't allow you to rename that star. And they had a way of making sure that they didn't resell stars or name the same star more than once. This was started in 1993 before Scott started working at the planetarium. So in his opinion, they did it the right way. They did it to raise money for planetarium projects. He says they didn't raise much. They didn't militantly advertise it. He says the money wasn't accounted for, so he couldn't break out what was made by this program. But he says that it made the difference between having a show and not having one during some of the leaner years. And the reason why I got all hopped up about this Name a Star program is, and you may not know this, but the International Star Registry, the whole naming a star fad, started in Toronto at the Toronto International Film Festival in the 1970s. There was a guy named Ivor Downey who was an ad man for the film festival, and he thought, well, why not sell star names? And so here's the headline from some months later, Film Festival Goofs on Buy a Star Plan. And so that was it for the International Star Registry, and they were never heard from again. Actually, to show that, I've brought a couple of books here. All right, so you can buy this or this from the ISR, or you can buy it off of eBay for a discount, which is what I did. This is volume 1, this is volume 8, so imagine there's 6 other volumes in between. It's faintly ridiculous. If you look through one of these books, you'll find an entire column of stars that are named Stephen. And there is no information given about them to tell them apart from their RA and deck coordinates. In the volume 1, which was published in the early 1980s, the coordinates are given in epoch 1950. So that's not very useful these days. But it's a bit of fun, and I invite you to come up here and look for the most vulgar named stars in the book that you can possibly find. And just at the end here, if you were watching Doctor Who earlier this year, you might have seen this one. An entire episode of television about the consequences of star naming. And if you look up this particular star in Orion, you'll find that it's a real star. I've got the actual certificate here. So, you know, International Star Registry, once again, something that was invented in Canada but capitalized upon in the United States. Kind of like me. All right, are there any questions?
First off, let's give Eric a big thank you for that talk. Wonderful job. I'm excited to hear more about it being from Canada as well, but it's a question over there. Yep.
I'm from the Detroit area, so the Royal Astronomical Society Windsor branch is quite active over there. One of our local groups loves the Royal Astronomical Observer's Handbook, and they're religious about buying it every year. And I use the late Terence Dickinson's Night Watch book as textbook for my observational astronomy class at EMU. So thank you.
You're welcome. I'm glad you're enjoying that.
We got time for one more if anybody else has a question for Eric. No, I'm not seeing it right now. Well, then let's thank Eric once more.
All right, thanks very much.
And this concludes the papers. Big thank you to all of our speakers and to our audience. I guess it's time for the state meetings.
I was right on time there. Yes. Well, I'd set my